Hey, I'm Derek, it's me, Derek, and welcome to Stop Skeletons and Fighting. Friends, history has just been made, potentially kicking off a bright new chapter in digital games preservation. I'd like to think I've talked enough about delisted mobile games on this channel for you all to know that there is currently no good solution for early iOS games emulation. Playing old iPhone and iPad games requires jailbreaking an old device, or finding an old device with the game you want to play still downloaded onto it. Assuming the device still works, assuming the game will still open. These are your only options for thousands and thousands and thousands of digital games. Girls Like Robots, Particle Mace, this weird Devil May Cry 4 port, the hobo with the shotgun game I can't get loading anymore, Zombie Dice, Zombie Highway, Call of Duty Zombies, a lot of zombie games, and of course, iFart! Oh wait, the godfather of fart apps is still stinking it up? And may the sun never set on the iFart empire. In case you didn't know, by some estimates, Apple makes more money off of games than Microsoft, Activision, Sony, and Nintendo combined. And that is all from them just simply owning the App Store. The launch of the iPhone App Store in 2008 was a shot across the bow that changed gaming forever. But for a majority of the games, especially the older ones, they are functionally inaccessible. Until now. Maybe, probably, hold on. Follow me. This right here, this is Super Monkey Ball iOS on my computer. It has taken this long for this to happen, but it finally happened. And here it is. Look at me go. I got a 1-up apparently. I died. The developer responsible for this breakthrough is Hikari no Yume. On February 2nd, 2023, Touch HLE, a high-level iOS emulator, was dropped onto an unsuspecting public. It isn't the most user-friendly program, and it launched with only Super Monkey Ball playable, but we can only hope that this is the beginning of preserving maybe the biggest cache of unpreserved digital games in history. Welcome back to Delisted, the show that spotlights digital games pulled from digital stores or abandoned by the march of time. And this is how Super Monkey Ball finally cracked iOS emulation. But first, it feels like everybody today is so busy. I mean, I'm busy doing this all day. Hey, I'm Derek, it's me. No, awful. God, bruh. How am I supposed to find time to eat healthy? But that is where Factor 75 comes in. There's no prepping, chopping, or shopping here, and Factor's fresh and never frozen meals are ready to go in just minutes. I did the keto meals, and my favorite one for the week was creamy Parmesan chicken. I cannot stress just how easy it was. You just poke the plastic, take a 2-minute dog petting break, and boom, you are ready to eat. After you wait a second for it to cool down. Power up for springtime with America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit.
Yeah. No, that's really good.
Get nutritious, chef-prepared meals delivered straight to your door so you can fuel up fast when you are too busy to remember to eat dinner before 9 p.m. I'm Derek. You're Derek. We're Derek. It's me, Derek. So if you're looking for a way to eat healthier without sacrificing convenience, give Factor 75 a try. Your body and your taste buds will thank you. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use the code SKELETONS50 for 50% off your first Factor box. That's factor75.com. Click the link and the code SKELETONS50. Thanks to Factor 75 for sponsoring this part of the episode. On to the video. Touch HLE is the emulator that makes it all possible, and developer Hikari no Yume claims this was all done with original code. They did not manipulate or reverse engineer any Apple code. Which brings you back to here, you watching me watching my computer screen. I hope this part of the video actually ages very quickly, but Touch HLE is extremely new and not the most user-friendly program yet, and you might have some trouble getting it started if you are not super familiar with emulation. There are some pretty helpful instructions, but they are not dumbed down enough for Uncle Derek, so I had a friend make me a bat file, also to learn what a bat file was, and then BAM! Okay, well actually, I also had to install a driver that allowed me to center my window and then hook up an Xbox controller, and then BAM! Super Monkey Ball for iOS, not sideloaded on a jailbroken iPhone, not streaming from a capture card. I know it doesn't look like much, but this emulation right here is actually historic. The game, on the other hand, is not really the story here. Or so I thought. I hope you are sitting down, folks, because Uncle Derek found himself a deep rabbit hole. Super Monkey Ball iOS, technically it's just Super Monkey Ball, which is dumb, but at least it wasn't called something like Super Monkey Ball or Super Monkey Eyeball. Don't laugh, dumber things happened at the time. was developed by Other Ocean Interactive and launched in July 2008, along with the launch of the App Store. It is primarily based on the DS game, which I think was called Touch My Monkey Butt or something, and features music from the Wii game, which had some bangers. Despite the impressively smooth 3D graphics, it didn't review great at the time, with the biggest problem being the controls and general issues with centering the motion controls. Pocket Gamer gave it only 3.5 stars, IGN gave it 4.5 out of 10. Damn! Don't worry, it means it's better than God Hand at least. And maybe it's because this is not the launch version of the game or that I'm playing on a controller, but I didn't think it was that bad. Though it seemed everyone agreed that game looked good, ran great, and was a decent value with over 100 stages. Though, no minigames? Dude, even the GBA game had golf. Now, is it a great monkey ball game? I'm not so sure I'd say so, but it is a good monkey ball game, and until recently, it was a lost monkey ball game. And it was successful despite everything, eventually becoming the 11th best-selling app when Apple celebrated their billionth download. It reportedly sold 300,000 downloads in just 20 days, and at a launch price of $9.99, I am sure Sega made some nice coin. I mean rings. And then one day, it was gone. The older the app, the more likely it was left behind as Apple's cell phone ecosystem progressed. And Monkey Ball was there from the very start. Not just with the launch of the App Store, actually. Super Monkey Ball iOS started as a game for the iPod Classic. That's right, folks. It's rabbit hole time. And before you ask, yes, the iPod had games. Over 50. We've covered the Sonic the Hedgehog iPod port before, and if it had happened, Super Monkey Ball iPod would have been the only 3D game on the system. And it would have actually used the scroll wheel. Producer Grace chatted with one of the main programmers of Super Monkey Ball iOS, Bob Shand, who gave us a lowdown on the wild story that took this beauty from the iPod to the launch of the App Store. Our story starts in mid to late 2007 in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, where a newly formed development studio called Other Ocean Interactive was one of the few developers making games for the iPod Classic, though Super Monkey Ball iPod never really made it past the prototype stage. Programmers Gordon Wood, Wendell Harding, and Bob Shand were hard at work getting a version of the DS game, Touch and Roll, yes, I actually do know what that game is called, running on their development computer. To do this, they created a wrapper layer that allowed them to get most of the DS code running. They even simulated the touch wheel by using something called a Logitech New Look. What is that? Oh, I'd love to play Doom on that thing. By the way, New Look, spelt in the most 2007's way possible. This is, of course, before we lost all our vowels in the recession. But Super Monkey Ball iPod apparently worked great, until Apple finally sent over an iPod that allowed them to load their own game onto it. Turns out their development program had something called perspective texture correction, while an iPod super does not. Now, if you don't know what perspective texture correction is, don't worry, neither did I, but when you look it up, the examples of it not working are checkerboards, which for Super Monkey Ball was literally the worst case scenario. They tried rendering the checkerboard platforms by placing down individual triangles, which worked visually, but made the game run like mashed potatoes, so Super Monkey Ball iPod was shelved. Meanwhile, Apple's iPhone dropped in June 2007 and was another mega hit for Steve Jobs, but was far from being the do-everything device we know today. There were a lot of arguments in Apple about how to let developers use it as a platform. Jobs, as you might expect, wanted to have as much control as possible, which meant relegating non-Apple made software to web-based apps for Safari, effectively blocking software developers from utilizing all of the iPhone. While many others outside and inside Apple wanted a way to streamline third-party native applications for the iPhone. This disagreement on approaches famously caused Orcs and Elves developer John Carmack and Steve Jobs to have a major falling out, resulting in Carmack telling Eurogamer that Steve Jobs doesn't care about games. Jobs eventually gave in and announced in an October 2007 open letter that a third-party SDK, or a software development kit, would be released in the following spring in March 2008. In the lead up to the SDK's release, Apple met with various developers to pick their brains and figure out what they needed to do in order to make the SDK good. Both Shand and Harding from Other Ocean were among the devs invited. In February 2008, they flew all the way from the east coast of Canada for the day for a 2 or so hour meeting with Apple. According to Shand, the meeting went well, and then they were soon on their way and enjoying the California weather for the rest of the day. But as they're about to go to the airport, they suddenly got a call. Hey, it's Apple. We can't tell you why, but don't get on that plane. Thank you, angel wearing jeans. I mean, I get a call like that, I ain't getting on no plane. They were told instead to meet an Apple rep at a restaurant. Here's how Shand tells it.
And he said, I can't really tell you what's going on, but we'd love you to stay. It'd be really good if you did stay. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge.
I mean, if I'm a developer, what do I care? I just go where the bosses tell me to. According to Shand, he ordered the best steak he could with all the trimmings. And so what was supposed to be a day trip was suddenly not just a day trip. So they stayed in California. And waited. What Apple wanted was so top secret, Shand and Wood sat in a room with a handler for 2.5 days, just twiddling their thumbs and waiting for all the proper paperwork to get signed. Finally, Apple shuffled them into a room with a few other third-party developers, and they found out what they were actually waiting for: early access to the iOS SDK. Now, because this was a major reversal from web browser apps to native apps, Apple was not messing around with security. The Other Ocean team was given development laptops with Xcode and the SDK on it, but all the hardware was taken from them at the end of the day. They couldn't take it out of the room or even go to the bathrooms by themselves. But all of that faded into the background as Shand and the Other Ocean programmers got to work. Remember that story about trying to get Monkey Ball working on an iPod? All that work abandoned? Turns out that having a working Super Monkey Ball emulator, mostly working for iOS, really streamlined the whole process. With input from Apple's support team, they were able to figure out how to use the accelerometer and other quirks of the iPhone.
And there were some bugs that we had to work through on some of the audio, some of the input, but it was pretty smooth, really. It was about as easy as you could get.
Within days, they had the game running, beating everyone's expectations. They even had time for another developer, Jonathan Innes, to fly in and update the graphics of the DS version and add higher fidelity. The team was at Apple for a couple of weeks. They started presenting the demo and up the chain of command until finally, they were standing in the office of Steve Jobs himself, watching him play their game.
He seemed quite jovial and happy, and I remember him playing one of the levels and falling off and saying like a mild swear word as he fell off, but with a laugh. Yeah, it was definitely a jovial atmosphere, and we were pretty pumped.
I don't know. Sounds like Jobs likes games to me, or at least he must have finally seen the advertising potential that video games represented. I mean, yo, look at this thing. I still think it looks pretty good for today, but for 2008, this was incredible. Finally, it was time for Apple's big SDK launch press event on March 6th, 2008. Apple showed off apps from other companies similarly called in to test their brand new kit. We see EA's Spore, Salesforce, AOL Instant Messenger, no, that's a blast from the past, a medical app, with the grand finale being Super Monkey Ball. Do you see this guy right here running in behind the presenter from Sega? That is developer Gordon Wood playing Monkey Ball live. If you have ever seen a single E3, then you know that live video game demos always have technical problems or are just actors reacting to a pre-recorded video. But this is apparently real-time gameplay footage, showcasing what was possible on what would become one of the most significant digital stores in human history. And it was the showstopper moment. Super Monkey Ball was the last to go on before Steve Jobs himself revealed the App Store. Hey, not bad for a day trip that turned into a 1-month dev crunch. Shand, Harding, and Wood's early work on the iPod really paid off, and they ended up with a very visually impressive app, especially compared to the other guys on the stage. Sorry, Spore. Super Monkey Ball iOS made it into Apple's official SDK launch, was featured in early ads, and of course was a launch game for the App Store in July 2008. In the very earliest days of its release, Super Monkey Ball shared the spotlight with Crow Mag Rally and Crash Bandicoot Nitro Kart 3D as basically the face of gaming on the App Store. And guess who noticed? Hikari no Yume! Finally, we are back to Touch HLE. Hikari was there in 2008, blown away by what she saw in the ads and was desperate to try Super Monkey Ball iOS herself. She finally got an iPod Touch in early 2009, and she was absolutely floored by the game.
One of the games that I knew about that made me want an iPod Touch was the port of Super Monkey Ball to the iPhone. Just a really cool looking game.
Other Ocean and Apple did it! The future of gaming!
It was a future.
It was a future. We say that every episode, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Well, you wrote this.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Were you trying to troll me? Yeah.
That's my
Okay.
it's my catchphrase.
Okay.
At this point.
But anyway, Super Monkey Ball was not the future, and as time wore on, the hype behind smartphone games died down, becoming a bit of a punchline itself. Eventually, Super Monkey Ball iOS was taken off of the App Store for good, and Hikari mostly moved on with her life and basically forgot all about it. Until the year 2021, when she saw the trailer for Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania. Released to celebrate this series' 20th anniversary, the trailer runs through the entire franchise. Hey, what, huh? Did you catch that? I'll run that back. Yeah, wait a minute. You just gotta jump from 2006 to 2010. I think you missed a few years there, buddy. Man, can you believe the disrespect? This type of thing drives me crazy, so hold on. Here we go. Series creator Toshihiro Nagoshi told Famitsu at the beginning of December 2006 that the entire series as a whole had sold about 4 million copies total. So, all the GameCube games, the Xbox port, DS game. I'm going to assume, just for the sake of argument, that he's also not including the sales of Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz Wii, which launched a couple weeks earlier in November 2006, and according to Sega's physical reports, sold about 350,000 copies in 2.5 months. In case I need to remind you, Super Monkey Ball iOS did 300,000 units in 20 days. There is a decent chance that the iOS game was the best-selling Monkey Ball game at some point, maybe still is? And it don't even got a Wikipedia page, come on! But I get that Sega was trying to appeal to console gamers with the Banana Mania trailer. But I think it is bad form to ignore the iPhone game as if it wasn't the version that introduced Super Monkey Ball to a whole generation. Not the least of which to Monkey Ball iOS superfan Hikari herself.
I saw it and I was just annoyed because the one Super Monkey Ball game I played, the iPhone game, iPod Touch game, wasn't in there.
Anyway, Hikari had a problem. This trailer made her want to play Super Monkey Ball iOS again, but she couldn't without a lot of effort. She eventually got a device and jailbroken it. She made it jailbroken, but, to quote the great sages of our time, there's got to be a better way. I, and maybe you, have run into this problem several times before, but Hikari actually decided to do something about it.
I wondered, would it be possible to write an emulator that can run Super Monkey Ball? Specifically, an emulator that just, instead of trying to run the whole iPhone operating system, the whole iOS, what if I just try to run the game itself? What if I just implement everything that iPhone OS provides the Super Monkey Ball users? Can I get it running?
But as these things often go, the idea had to be backburnered until November 2022, when Hikari found herself with some spare time. Also known as unemployment.
More like fun employment.
Funployment, when she got to compiling, working more than full-time over the period of 2 months. She told us that getting the audio playback to work correctly was super annoying, mirroring what Shan said about the process of programming the game originally back in 2008. But she plowed on, getting more and more of the game to work.
And then it crashes. And then I fix a few more things, and then I'm at the main menu screen. And then getting from the main menu screen to actually being in game was a bunch more work. But once it's drawn anything on the screen at all, the finish line is in sight, which is really motivating.
Finally, Hikari got the game running, and the craziest thing to me is that she was so excited, she didn't actually test the entire game before releasing the emulator on February 2nd, 2023. The first time she played through the entire game was during her 8-hour launch celebration stream on Twitch. That is some mad lad energy, that is some big energy, and I am here for it. The funniest thing to me is that Super Monkey Ball iOS on Touch HLE plays great, and again, because you're playing it on a controller, it's maybe even better than it was on an iPhone. It actually only crashed once for us while making this video. She made an emulator that plays Super Monkey Ball iOS, and it does that very well.
And I know that it's definitely not the only old iPhone, iPod Touch, iOS game that can be gotten running with some effort, as shown by the fact that it now runs one other game, which is Crash Bandicoot.
Crash Bandicoot.
What have you done to its eyes?
Alright, gotta come clean. Been holding out on you. After Grace sent Hikari an interview request, actually, Grace, you know what, you tell it.
So I sent the request, and I think she went and watched our Nitro Kart video just to make sure that we got it where it counts. And and then she just did it, and I didn't even know. And then we were just in our call, and I was like, what?
Yeah. Look under your chair. Here's Nitro Kart emulation.
So yeah, I'm happy to announce that our Crash Bandicoot Nitro Kart 3D video is already out of date. And man, how cool is that? Hikari told us she was able to get it running so quickly, besides that she's just a beast, because both Super Monkey Ball and Crash Nitro Kart 3D came out about the same time and demand similar things from the iOS operating system. So if Crow Mag Rally comes next, that is basically the original trilogy.
But now it is time for the less fun aspect of this huge step forward in iOS emulation. Why hasn't emulation for these old iOS games happened before? Well, first of all, because it's hard. Day one of the App Store had over 500 apps, which is a lot, but for context, that's like nearly the entire library of the Nintendo Entertainment System, give or take a few hundred games or so. Just on the first day of existing. Like, even if you cut out all the stuff that eventually made it to other platforms, it is a monumental task for the rest. And that is even before you consider that every game released probably had multiple versions and updates. There are a lot of programs out there that attempt to emulate various versions of the iOS operating system, but most are geared towards current software. No one has ever focused specifically on the pre-32-bit apocalypse games, or if they did, they didn't release it because they were worried about legal issues from Apple. Like, we don't know that Apple wouldn't go after a program like Touch HLE, even if it isn't breaking any copyright rules.
I have been extremely careful during this project, perhaps more careful than most people would be, not to violate Apple's copyrights so far as I can. I don't use any code written by Apple. I've been careful to avoid reverse engineering iPhone OS itself. And in order to use the project, in order to use the code I've written, you don't have to violate Apple's copyrights. You can download the project and it doesn't contain anything that, isn't legal to distribute.
Hikari is not advocating piracy. I might be, but she is not. So be cool. I know most of you know how this works, but if you want to try out this emulator yourself, do not go asking Hikari to give you a ROM of Crash Bandicoot Nitro Kart 3D or anything like that. You know what? It kind of reminds me of something I tell new YouTubers. Just because your content is free use or otherwise legal, it doesn't mean someone can't sue you. Apple could probably go after everyone who even watches this video and still have a GDP bigger than most countries. It's something to think about, something to watch, as hopefully more and more games become playable on the platform. Man, how incredibly fitting is it that a game that helped launch the App Store also launched iOS emulation? Before making this video, I never really gave much thought to Super Monkey Ball iOS, other than it, being an App Store launch title. But after talking with the developers and learning its story, I've come to realize that this little mobile game is actually a pretty important and historic game, not just for the Super Monkey Ball franchise, but for gaming as a whole. And it doesn't have a Wikipedia page! Special thanks to Bob Shand and Hikari no Yume for sharing their stories with us. It was a lot of fun telling this story to you all. I hope that this opens the door to more mobile video game accessibility and preservation. But if it doesn't, it ain't gonna stop me from hunting these games down and telling you all about them. Gone but not forgotten so long as I'm around. We're live on scene at the shelf. Let's see what we have today. We have the This Is Fine dog. A lot of people talk about the This Is Fine dog. You can get this at Casey Green's website. This is a real thing by the real guy. Shout out to Dusa. Drill. Shout out to Drill, the king of Twitter. He has a book of just his tweets. Yes.
Yep, that's mine.
That's Grace's, yeah. I feel like the centerpiece, though, of the shelf for this video is the booster. What is this called again? This is the Radio Shack booster. I'm a big fan of devices that make your portable device not portable anymore. It takes 4 C batteries. It has a light. It has speakers, a nice little joystick to kind of give you maximum control, I guess. Do you want to play your Game Boy on your desk at home? I guess get the booster, available now at Radio Shack. It's just a big hunk of useless plastic that makes me laugh. We have a U-Draw tablet down here that a friend and editor gave us. And then we have another U-Draw tablet that someone just donated to us. So this is a Wii one. That is a PS3 one. So now we, I guess, just need an Xbox one. Please don't send us an Xbox one. We are fine. I guess we technically need the U-Draw games still. Please don't send us the U-Draw games. We're fine. We have enough of your we have enough of your U-Draw junk. Even a trash can can overfill. We're to me, 2 U-Draws, 1 boxed, is overflow with U-Draw. So we appreciate your donations, but you know what? Sorry, I can only take so many U-Draws. I am not Alex Rushdie from 13 AM Games and have 90,000 copies of Godzilla on VHS, okay? Actually, you know, send all your U-Draw stuff care of Alex Rushdie. I'm sure he just give it all to him. Alex, what happens is someone sends you a U-Draw, you send them back a copy of Godzilla, all right? And then it's the circle of life, okay? Well, that's going to do it. Thanks. Hey, Patreon supporters, we love you so much. Podcast happens if you want to be on that and chat with us along. Videos early. We do polls. Also, hey, t-shirts. We haven't worn the t-shirts in a while. Stop Skeletons Fighting t-shirts. They are available. Pixel Empire, link below. If you want to get hella fresh, the freshest possible, tell them, you know what? Tell them you're a fan of the YouTube channel. Or tell them it's just a band. Oh, it's a synthwave metal band. I don't know. Like, but my favorite thing about this shirt and our name is that, like, it doesn't even look like it's a YouTube channel. It can be anything you want. You can hide in plain sight, wear a cool shirt, and people don't even realize you're a big dumb nerd. Say hi to your family at the reunion, at the wake, and be like, yeah.
Here's something you're not gonna have a political fight about. We can all agree. Stop skeletons from fighting.
Yeah.
Thanks, bye!